In my some years of being a fan of the Mother series, I found that a pretty common opinion to share around is one's ranking of the 3 games in the series. You'd think with only a trio of games, it'd be pretty easy to rank them all, and for many it definitely is, but there's more than meets the eye, I feel, when it comes to how to look at these games. I've always felt there's a lot of specific factors that go into making each of these games great, and in turn, things about each game that are better than one or both of the other 2 games. Seeing as the Mother games are so packed with interesting things to discuss, I think it'd be compelling to go over my thoughts on everything I feel makes a Mother game better and worse than one or both of the other 2 games, going over both their strengths and setbacks. Oh, and disclaimer, this video is all my opinions, and therefore is subjective. Please don't take anything I say in this as dismissive towards your own personal thoughts and takeaways of these games. No one can take away how you feel about the Mother games, and always remember that. Anyhow, let me begin. Firstly is good ol' Mother 1, aka EarthBound Beginnings. As the first game in the series, this is where the developers started out, before they had fully refined things, and so this game is bogged down by coarse elements. However, this game is still excellent, and actually accomplished many things better than Mother 2, aka EarthBound, so let's go over everything. Mother 1 has better and more believable connections between your party members and the main protagonist. In Mother 2, you're prophesized from the very beginning that you're going to meet 2 other boys and a girl, and that you're going to save the world. In all honesty, I think that's lame. Mother 1 by comparison has actual requirements for you getting all your party members, albeit simple ones. Lloyd won't trust you enough that you won't bully him and to join you until you bring him a bottle rocket. Anna only joins you if you bring her hat that she lost, and Teddy only joins you once you've gotten into a one-on-one fight with him. It really makes these party members feel more like they're Ninten's friends rather than just party members. They only trust you enough to join after Ninten makes a connection. Meanwhile, Mother 2 just has them join because... okay, with Paula I can say that makes sense. You know, Ness saves her. She must feel grateful for that, and she knows that she has deadly powers, so that makes sense to help him. Jeff and Pooh though? Jeff has probably never heard of PSI or telepathy in his life, and suddenly he's hearing voices in his head to travel across the world to save 2 kids trapped in a hole somewhere. Like, when I say it out loud like that, it just sounds a little more ridiculous from a story perspective compared to how Lloyd joins you. Also, Pooh just joins you because his master tells him to join you. Alright. Speaking of connections, I think Ninten's connection to the final boss, Gygus, is so much more compelling than what Mother 2 has. Ninten actually has a connection to him through George and Maria. Ness doesn't have any connection to Gygus, meanwhile. He's just destined to defeat him, and that's it. That's so much more boring. Mother 1 also has a more interesting atmosphere overall. There's something almost ethereal about their desolate yet engaging world of Mother 1. Its simplicity, made up from the limits of the NES hardware, feels so much more absorbing than what Mother 2 has in a way that's difficult to describe other than to just say, play these 2 games and you'll notice the difference. One factor I find that contributes to this atmosphere is the music. I feel like Mother 1 has a soundtrack that is really pushing the limits of what the NES can do, and I do kind of prefer some of the renditions of some of the tracks from this game over what Mother 2 has. For example, I kind of don't care for the distant radio effect of the Dusty Dunes desert theme, I just prefer the Yucca desert theme instead. On a mostly unrelated note, there are also some certain gameplay elements that Mother 1 had that Mother 2 is lacking, such as a few items of interest. The breadcrumbs are fun to use for backtracking and speedrunning, and the amusing gags, swear words, and words of love are sorely missed. Also, Mother 2 doesn't have a run button. Mother 1 does. Mother 1 also has some optional stuff you don't need to do to complete the game, such as the Strawberry Tofu side quest. Mother 2 sorta doesn't have any optional content like this. Like, it's cool that for Mother 1, you can entirely skip meeting Teddy if you want. It makes repeat playthroughs more interesting, since there's more variety in how you can get to the end of the game than what Mother 2 has to offer. One final thing is that I feel like Mother 1's ending is sort of more fulfilling. It does feel genuinely so happy and conclusive, seeing how the protagonists fulfilled their goals in the end. Mother 2, I feel, is almost too sappy. Mother 1 strikes a better balance of earnestness, but this point is kind of a stretch, because Mother 2 does still have an excellent ending. That being said, I feel like the overall narrative that Mother 1 has is just a bit better than Mother 2. Going back to the party members real quick, I think the way how 3 out of your 4 main party members have reason to go up against Gygus makes more sense than Mother 2's approach. Mother 2 is really just Nessa's journey with friends tagged on. Mother 1, I feel, makes better use of the fact that Ninten's friends are there to help, such as with Lloyd saving you when the mountain cottage is attacked, or the fact that Anna's reason for going out to fight is to try and save her mother. It feels like Mother 2 doesn't take full advantage of this characterization between the protagonists as well as Mother 1 does. Okay, so I really love Mother 1 a lot, but it is difficult to put into a reasonable way why exactly I feel like there's a lot that it does better than Mother 2. By comparison, it is a lot easier to describe what Mother 2 does better, so let's go over that now. A good start is the music. Not only does Mother 2 have way more music tracks than Mother 1, but the SNES can just make some great sounding music, man. So many good memorable tracks are in this game. Mother 2 also has better sprite art than Mother 1, which is a no-brainer, like duh, the 16-bit game is going to look nicer than the 8-bit one. The gameplay is of course also vastly improved. Inventory management is much nicer now since your inventory is twice as big. You can actually see enemy encounters on the overworld, as opposed to that damn enemy encounter rate from the random encounters. The way PSI works too is just a lot sharper and easier to use. Like, it's cool you can get PSI Fire Omega that instantly kills all enemies as Anna, but hell if I'm gonna get her all the way up to level 35 in a game that takes so long to grind normally. Speaking of grinding, the difficulty curve in Mother 2 is very reasonable, especially in comparison to Mother 1. The way Mother 2 handles maps is also superior to how Mother 1 does it. Mother 1's map is of the entire map of the game, and can be a little less than straightforward. Meanwhile, Mother 2 has maps for each town, which is helpful for your first time in each area, to find where things like the local hospital and hotel are. I can't forget to mention as well, that the battle system in general is of course majorly overhauled from Mother 1's. The most poignant addition being the rolling HP mechanic, which greatly improves how battles play out. One last thing too, is that Teleport Beta is such a great addition. Teleporting in Mother 1 by comparison is painful. So, that's a lot of improvements they made in Mother 2, but that certainly doesn't mean those things that Mother 1 did better aren't important. So I will say, this is very much close in my head, but I just have to edge out Mother 2 as the better game. As much as I love Mother 1, Mother 2 does just have more game to absorb and enjoy, as well as vastly better presentation and gameplay. But the question is now, is Mother 2 better than Mother 3, aka EarthBound 3? Well, let's go over what Mother 3 did better than Mother 2. Going back to Mother 1 for just a second, many dismiss it as just a worse version of Mother 2, but if anything, that doesn't really mean Mother 1 is actually worse. Functionally as a sequel, Mother 3 works better as it actually is a proper sequel, rather than being a sort of remake, sort of new game that Mother 2 is. I have to say sort of because, yeah, a lot of elements from Mother 2 are very different to Mother 1, but a lot of stuff is really similar. You play again as a black-haired kid in a blue and yellow striped shirt with a red hat. You get joined by a blonde girl in a pink dress with elemental PSI, a nerdy kid in glasses who's good with tech. You journey around to find 8 melodies. You go home to your mother to dine on your home-cooked favorite meal. You get the picture. Functionally, Mother 3 presents completely new experiences, while still being made by the same author, which is what a good sequel should be. Mother 3 also has a completely superior beginning to the game. I already talked about how Mother 2 starting off with a prophecy of you saving the world is kinda lame, as well as gameplay-wise being almost kind of brutal for beginners. Meanwhile, Mother 3's gameplay itself is well balanced early on, and intuitive instantly, and the story is immediately compelling as soon as the first chapter begins. This is all accentuated with how the first 3 chapters are set from the perspective of characters other than Lucas, which ends up providing not only a more unique experience than what Mother 2 has, but also makes these supporting protagonists a lot more interesting, as you get to see the world through their eyes for an entire chapter, which makes these characters more compelling than Nessa's party in Mother 2. I also feel like Mother 3, out of the 3 games, has the most interesting supplemental material. Mother 1 does admittedly come close with stuff like the Mother Encyclopedia, but Mother 3's developer interviews are so fascinatingly engrossing that I have to give Mother 3 the point here. Mother 2 by comparison has very little riveting supplemental material like this, funnily enough. On the point of developer interviews, that does bring me to my point about how Mother 3 has the most interesting subtext. I think Mother 3 has some of the most captivating subtext out of almost any video game, really. There's a reason I've made tons of videos analysing this game's subtext. It's so damn interesting, especially so looking at those developer interviews I mentioned before. Mother 2 just doesn't have the same thing. On a similar note, I can confidently say that the music in Mother 3 is way more enthralling thematically, and by that I mean, looking at notes from Shogo Sakai, the game's composer, most of the music present in the game is meant to have deeper significance that symbolises something relevant to the characters and their environment, such as how a lot of the music in Chapter 3 uses an accordion to emphasise Salsa being forced to work against his will. This use of symbolism in the music is so much cooler than anything what Mother 2 does with its music. Mother 3 also does just have a lot more music too, which of course is nice as well. Another thing is that the sprite art is cleaner, but that's a point I'll have to elaborate on later. That being said, the game is animated far better than Mother 2 is. Characters now have talking animations, idle animations, and more. Many of the cutscenes too are so smoothly done and look great. In terms of gameplay, Mother 3 evolves the battle system a lot from Mother 2. The non-psychic attacks such as brute force, thief tools, and monkey tricks are all intuitive and fun to use. Some of the battle abilities that Mother 2 has to offer, such as Mirror, can be confusing and arbitrary to use by comparison. And of course, rhythm combos are an excellent addition that wholly elevates the game's battle system above not just Mother 2, but pretty much any standard RPG. Rhythm combos are such a straightforward yet exhilarating mechanic that it is one of the standout features of Mother 3, even amongst people who don't particularly vibe with its other elements. Keeping with the theme of gameplay, many other things even outside of battle were improved, such as the addition of the dashing system, and even more improved inventory system. Also, the way maps are handled in this game is yet again improved from how Mother 2 does it, with maps for almost every individual dungeon, as well as for other areas. One last thing I want to mention is that the puzzle areas are handled better in Mother 3, and what I mean by that is, the Clayman factory is so much more manageable than, say, the Monkey Caves. So, that was the case in favour of Mother 3. However, no game is perfect, and there are things Mother 2 accomplishes better than it. So, let's go over all those points now. I mentioned earlier that Mother 3's sprite art is cleaner than Mother 2's, but to now elaborate on that point, while Mother 3's is cleaner, the crudeness of Mother 2's is far more endearing, even if it's not animated nearly as well. To add to this, Mother 2's colour palette is far nicer, as Mother 3 has the GBA thing where all the colours are way too bright and washed out, to compensate with the original GBA having no backlight. On the topic of the crude sprites versus the clean ones, that makes me want to say that the whimsy Mother 2 has is something charming that is lost with Mother 3. The unconventional yet down-to-earth setting of EarthBound is just so much more appealing in a way that Mother 3 doesn't capture. Mother 3 is far more real in terms of its characters, but the whimsical nature of Mother 2 is a big draw of that game that can't be understated. Something that I think about often too is that Mother 2 was far better at accomplishing what it set out to do. What I mean by that is, the game didn't change that much during development. It set out to have what it wanted and it accomplished it. Meanwhile, Mother 3 promised many features, story elements, and more that didn't show up in the released game, such as platforming, overworld combat, and even cut characters. From a marketing standpoint, this is a failing of Mother 3 to not deliver what it advertised it would include, but also from the player's perspective, these are interesting things that the game would have likely benefited from including. So in that sense, Mother 2 not having so many unkept promises gives it the point in that regard. Another thing is that due to the GBA hardware, Mother 3's soundtrack had to be downgraded, an example being with Shogo Sakai explaining how "Isn't This Such a Utopia" had to be simplified, because all of the instruments in the song coupled with the large map were making the game lag. Meanwhile, Mother 2 sounds absolutely phenomenal, as unlike with the GBA, which has to make its music using the system's CPU, the Super Nintendo has a dedicated sound chip, and is able to make the music in Mother 2 sound fantastic, especially in comparison to Mother 3, which, on real hardware, will even suffer strange staticky background noise due to the GBA. Mother 2 also has more consistent portrayals of its playable characters. And to clarify that point, in that game, the playable characters largely are blank slates, and there is minimal dialogue between all of them during the game, with the NPCs and other characters being reserved for world building and other interesting dialogue. This is done in an effort so you can more easily insert yourself and your friends into the shoes of who you're playing as, which was, to say the least, done excellently, as fans of this game have been able to craft personal identities for these characters while still being able to work within the canon presented in the game. As I was talking about earlier, I do think Mother 1 did ultimately strike a better balance of having blank slate identities and actual characterization for its playable characters than what Mother 2 did, but I digress. Regardless, Mother 3 goes for something different. It has the playable characters have more depth within the actual game itself. This in of itself isn't something bad. If anything, I prefer how Mother 3 handled this over how Mother 2 does. But my problem is with how Mother 3 is inconsistent with how it portrays its protagonists. During the first half of the game, your party members, other than your leading one, will speak a lot and you get a good grasp on their characterization. Hell, even your leading ones that don't speak, you can get a good grasp on their character through just their animations. But during the second half of the game, the protagonists are largely silent, with only small bits of their character being shown. They become blank slates more or less for a lot of the rest of the game, and that inconsistency is something that I feel like is a flaw. Mother 2 may handle this aspect in a way that I find less engrossing, but I feel that its consistency makes me actually enjoy it a little more. I feel like in Mother 3 this is at its worst during Chapter 8, where the main characters are given information that would change their entire perspectives on their lives in the world, and don't say anything at all in response. All the more strange when you remember that there's cut dialogue, like the elevator cutscene. That one in particular shows not only were they going to actually respond to an event in the game that was quite literally life-changing, but also that this half of the game was to have writing that was more consistent with the first half originally, but was changed for whatever reason, possibly to capture a similar feeling as to what Mother 2 had, but it just feels half-hearted in the end considering how different it makes these characters feel between the two halves of the game. And one last thing is that overall, Mother 2 is far better balanced with a far more reasonable difficulty curve. Mother 3 is mostly well balanced, but sections like Chapter 4, which suffers dreadfully from being designed for 3 party members and not rebalanced afterwards to only suit 2, ends up being a huge roadblock for people playing this game for the first time. Wow, you'd expect with all that said that I don't actually like Mother 3 very much, huh? Well, my dear viewer, you'd be mistaken, because Mother 3 is still a phenomenal video game despite those grievances. No game is perfect, no matter how many things it does do right. That all being stated, which game is better out of Mother 2 and Mother 3? Which one beats the other out and takes the crown for the best Mother game? That would have to go to Mother 3. As much as Mother 2 does so much right and is overall just such a consistently smooth and enjoyable ride, Mother 3's highs are just so much higher. Mother 3 is a piece of art that really changed my life, and while I can say the same thing about the first 2 Mother games, I can't say it did so nearly as much as the third game. So, our final ranking is Mother 1 in third, Mother 2 in second, and Mother 3 in first. But believe me, this is a very, very close ranking. Some of those things that Mother 1 does better than Mother 2 really make me second guess myself sometimes, in terms of putting it above 2. But ultimately, Mother 3 does reign supreme over both of them, even if Mother 1 and 2 are still S-tier games. So congratulations Mother 3, you are the best Mother game. In my opinion. And on that note, I think it's a good time to remind you all, this was all indeed my opinions on this subject, but I would enjoy to read all of your opinions too. So feel free to leave a comment, whether it be on if you feel like I left any points out, or if you feel differently about ranking these 3 games. Thank you, and goodbye.